Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Thanks so much for being with us as we get set to dive into another fascinating guest and conversation. We're going to be talking with our very special guest today. She is a mother who is going to share her story of loss, love, and connecting with the afterlife, one of my favorite subjects. I have often said, Diane Calderon, that it's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, but not because I've experienced any of it, but because I'm curious. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Richard, for this opportunity to share my story with you and with your listeners. And I hope that maybe a few hearts will be touched by my tale.
Well, I'm sure that it will be, and I thank you so much for sharing it. I'm sure it is not an easy story to tell, because it is around the as it's phrased here, the tragic loss of your son. And we'll talk about that. But you are more than just a survivor, and more than just a mother. You have some very special gifts as well. Talk to us
I,
about those.
yeah, I do, but these weren't gifts that I had carried with me throughout my life. I mean, I may have had them, but they were way beneath my surface. And when my son died, he came forth with some pretty amazing evidence that his life was continuing on in a different dimension. And
Mm,
he nudged me through a variety of means to investigate the afterlife, eventually learn so much about the afterlife that I was given the opportunity to take classes that led me to learn how to do mediumship. So I never felt like I was born a medium. I didn't see spirits when I was a kid or, at any point in my life until I started hearing from my son. I still don't see the spirits, but I've learned how to make connections for other people as a medium. And it's been a remarkable change in my life, one I did not see as I lived many years before I got to this point.
mm. Well, let's go ahead and start off by talking about, tell us about your son. We'll get into the passing, but tell us about Matthew. I'm curious, was he named after the apostle?
When I was found out I was pregnant, surprise, surprise, I didn't expect a kid to be coming. And I got closer to that birth date. I began to wonder, what name am I going to give this guy? And I'm looking at books and I'm thinking about people I knew who, I like their names. And it struck me that the name that was perfect for him was Matthew. And in Hebrew, it meant gift of God. And so my choice in Matthew was that this kid was a gift to me. I was not anticipating it. What a perfect name. So that's how he got the name Matthew.
Hmm. Well, what kind of a kid was he as he was growing up?
Well, Matthew was a really cool kid. He was a gentle soul. He was very friendly, quite the chatterbox throughout most of his life. But as a kid, he was the one that would go to school and always get in trouble for talking too much in class. He didn't pay a lot of attention to the assignments, so we had a little struggle getting him through grade school and into high school because he wouldn't do his homework. But he loved interacting with people, helping people. He was always kind. He loved playing sports. He wasn't great at it, but he enjoyed, participating with everybody else. We had lots of occasions where the teams would come over to the house for parties because that's who we are. In high school, he was the kid that cared about the other students. He wasn't a star student. He was not a star athlete. He was the one, though, that other students that were having issues would come to him and ask for advice and ask for help. And he often brought those kids over to the house to meet with us. My husband was a counselor, and I had done a little bit of social work type stuff in my life. And we often helped those kids through some of their crises in life. Matthew becomes an adult. He wanted to be a builder. He loved working on homes and doing all kinds of different kinds of construction. He picked up on all these techniques quickly. He was not the type that would read a book to learn something. He would just watch somebody and then learn from them. And
Mm,
as he got older, he wanted to be a contractor. It just took him a long time to start getting settled down to do the contracting. In between, he was doing other things like traveling, river rafting, hiking, anything he could do to have fun.
mm. Now, this process that you have been through in terms of losing a child, I certainly have never experienced that, especially considering the fact that I have no children. But I did experience, I guess I could say, through my father when my eldest sister, his first born, passed away a couple years ago. And my mother shared with me a conversation that she had with him that basically said, he says, I'm tired. I just don't want to be here. Which, of course, I know she understood. But also, she also understood what his health condition was, which was actually quite good. She says he has the blood pressure of a 20-year-old. My dad was in his 90s. And so when he said that to my mother, she knowing his health condition, she says, okay, so what are you going to die of? you know, but that's how he felt. My understanding is that your husband, did he suffer along those same lines of like, I just, I'm, I can't take this. I want to leave.
Well, no. My husband, he was a few years older than I, and very bright man throughout his life, ended up developing a horrible form of dementia, Lewy body dementia. He had
Mm,
a small stroke in 2011, and he just fell apart shortly after that and began to lose himself. So by early 2013, he wasn't always with us mentally. He was off in this other world that people who have dementia go to. I know now that they kind of visit the spirit world, but at the time, I don't know what's going on with his mind. And it was very difficult and frustrating to be able to interact with him on a full-time basis. He had moments where he was clear, but he had increasing moments where he didn't know who I was or where he was or anything that was going on. So at the time that my son passed, my husband was so far gone that when I told him what had happened to Matthew and the tragedy that had occurred, the best he could do is just pat my head and say, "Oh, I'm sorry."
mm,
the the death didn't really hit for a couple of days, and I think when people started coming and expressing, their concerns, he began to realize that Matthew wasn't with us in the physical world anymore. But
mm.
my husband, needed a lot of care. I kept him at home throughout and got him on hospice at one point. And in time, 2 years after Matthew passed, my husband joined him.
Ah, well, that's kind of what happened with my father after my sister passed. It was to the month, 1 year later, that 5 days prior, they had done a bunch of tests. They had him in the hospital, my father, and said that he had Parkinson's and early onset dementia.
Oh,
And of course, he
yes.
left 5 days later, which I think was actually a blessing. And I look at it from the standpoint that my sister paved the way. Um, Not necessarily a fun thing to think about, but by the same token, and I'm sure that you probably understand this, that and by the way, this is one of my father's wise sayings, as I like to call them. He said that eat, drink, and be merry in moderation, because nobody gets out of this world alive. Um, I mean, we're all going to transition, or and again, this is to honor Dr. Bernie Siegel, who I've had on this program following the passing of his wife, we were actually talking about that, and I made the comment about his wife. I said, so I asked him a question about the passing of his wife, the transition. And he says, what are you talking about? He says, she died. Why can't we just say she died? So in deference to Dr. Bernie Siegel, um, when your husband died,
Mhm.
was there, and again, I've learned that there's nothing wrong with these emotions, these feelings. Was there a sense of sort of a sense of relief that now he is no longer trapped in that, we'll call it maybe a cage in that body? Now he is fully conscious and sentient as an entity and so forth. And of course, you and I both will recognize that as far as your son and your husband, you'll always know them as such,
Mhm.
as I will always know my sister and my father as my sister and father. But we both recognize that there is no gender on the other side. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Talk to us a little bit about your coping with this in terms of the tragic loss of your son, which I want to get into, of course. And then, of course, obviously the uh, sort of expected, because we really did it. We were preparing ourselves because we knew my
Mhm.
father did not have long.
Mhm.
Talk to us a little bit about the differences in the grieving process for you between those
Okay.
two.
Okay, the differences would be, starting with my son, who died January 2014. Uh, you know, Shortly before he had passed, there was no clue in my head that he was going to be leaving soon, that he would be dying at any point. He seemed to be making a turning point in his life where he was looking forward to the future and working towards becoming this contractor and hopefully having a successful business. And at the time, I'm dealing with my husband who was declining, and my son was helping me with that. When my son died so unexpectedly, the grief was tremendous. Not only had lost my son, he had died, he had passed over. He went in the middle of my trying to help his dad through the process that his dad was going through. And I was left pretty much on my own in taking care of things. I
Mm.
didn't have close relatives, a handful of friends in the area, but outside of my son Matthew, there wasn't a whole lot of help to come in and get me through that process. And the grief hit really hard. Fortunately for me, Matthew did send me signs right away that he was okay. And that helped ease my going through the grief. I couldn't collapse and just go into the heavy, heavy grief that some people are able to do or do go to because I had to take care of my husband. But the grief was always there in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because Matthew had sent me the signs, it made me go on a quest to find out, well, how is he sending me these signs and what's going on in the afterlife? And it eventually led me to have a medium reading, get some information about what's going on with him. And that helped me tremendously for the next couple of years in dealing with my husband and his condition. It helped me so much that when my husband would sometimes go off into his little, you know, la la land and
Mm-hmm.
say things like, "Oh, Matthew came by the other day." I could say, "Oh, did he? What'd he have to say?" "Oh, he said that he's learning how to help people die and that when I die, he's going to help me." I mean,
Mm.
I was prepared to know exactly what he meant by that. I knew that by then my son is on the other side and he's visiting my husband. My husband's in a state where he could interact with that spirit world. My husband, every now and then, would talk about his mother, his brother, but a lot about Matthew. So I was prepared for the worst. My husband's condition declined. It took a little time, but the last month he was here, it was obvious he wasn't going to be around very long and his body basically shut down. So under hospice, I followed, what they had told me to do with him, and we went through that. I had stepchildren. I had a couple of them that were here to help me through that, and we watched as their dad, as my husband, slowly faded away in many ways.
Mm.
But there were a couple of moments when he would be alert enough to, interact with us and tell us that, his mom and Matthew were there visiting And that brought me a great deal of comfort that they were around. And then we reached that point where my husband was ready to go. And, we saw the warning signs. We got some interesting signs a few hours before he passed that were rather fascinating, with an owl showing up and hooting several times one night. And the kids were like, "What's that mean?" And I told them, "Your dad, he's like two-thirds Native American, and he was always into, Native American stories, and his mother would tell him things when he was growing up, and the owls come to take the soul home. I mean, they're here to take him home." So,
Mm.
he's going to pass within a few hours. And so we watched, and when he got ready to leave, he came to us clear enough. I mean, he had trouble talking, but clear enough to kind of say goodbyes through his eyes. And then at the last moments, I was holding his hands and hugging him, and he looked at me all of a sudden and said in a very weak voice, "I love you." Took a couple of breaths, and he was gone. And yeah, I missed him, and it was hard to see that, but I felt his spirit going through and moving out of that fragile body. This was a man who had been healthy all his life. He had done so much manual labor and hard work, and here was this little shrunken old guy in this poor little body. And I knew that he was just as free as a bird and was happy to be over there on the other side. And he's there with his family and with Matthew. Shortly after he passed over, I had walked to a kitchen window and had the phone in my hands to make some calls, and a hawk flew right in front of the window. I mean, right in front of the window. And I just had that feeling that was a hello from my husband, this hawk saying, "My soul is now free." So I would say that Matthew's death prepared me for what I would go through with my husband. The grief with Matthew was hard and heavy, but I had to move through it quickly. The grief with my husband wasn't so much grief as I just missed the guy, and it was hard to see him go the way he went. But I know that he's fine and he's happy over there. And I've heard from both of them, and they're just
Mm.
laughing right now as I'm talking about them, because they're doing great and
Mm.
they see that I've moved forward quite a bit in my life, and they're happy for me.
I'll tell you, that makes me feel really good because when we released my beloved Makushla, she was my dog. The afternoon that we came home, having made the decision to let her go, uh, as we're getting out of the car, a hawk flew over us. So apparently, that is one of those wonderful signs that yeah, it's not only is it time, but it's going to be okay. And then I was told by another intuitive regarding pets that she would be watching over me over my right shoulder. So, she's back here somewhere.
Beautiful. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're always around us. And if you just maybe meditate, go inside a little bit, you might feel them around you. But sometimes you'll just catch a glimpse in the corner of your eye of something, and that might be their energy saying
Yeah.
hello.
Well, we came to Santa Barbara, for example. We came to Santa Barbara with four cats and three dogs. And the strange thing was that um, one of the dogs we had just acquired during the period of time that we were selling our home and getting ready to move. And I'm thinking, no, wait a minute, it's not fair to this dog. We'll bring this dog into this home, sell it, move, and go somewhere else. And now this dog has to adjust again.
Mhm.
Well, obviously, I was wrong about that because it didn't take the dog that much adjusting. But we started out with the three dogs and four cats, and we fostered with a local organization called ASAP kittens. And we
Mhm.
went from four cats to nine. And we are now down to one dog and one cat.
Oh wow.
But the dog is not one of the original three.
Mhm.
So we've gone through this process mathematically, I guess I could say we've gone through it 13 times. And obviously we'll go through it 14 and 15. We don't know when, but we know that's part of the, well, I like to say that's part of the bargain. You want this animal, this small little critter, the kitten or puppy in your life, and so forth, and it's great for our health. There's science has proven that, as
Hmm.
well as our psyche. Um, but that's part of the deal, and it's part of the deal with us coming into this world. I was told, and I'd love for you to expound on this, that we, as we have come into this world, you and I, those
Hmm.
listening and so forth, we are referred to by those on the other side. We are, in this time in which we live as human beings, we're referred to by them as heroes
Yes.
because we have chosen to come into this world at this time in human history. Um, and there are a lot of reasons why that is. And I'm curious as to your observations. Do you get that sense from the other side that they say, boy, you guys are really, thank you for your courage in going there, and so forth. We're so glad you're there because you guys can really, you can make a difference. And of course, our difference here on Tell Me Your Story is to help to raise the consciousness and look for those new ways of living. Tell us about your perceptions in that regard.
My perceptions are in line with what you're saying here, Richard. I have heard from so many different mediums, and I work for a medium myself, and I deal with her clients, and a lot of times they'll contact me about a reading they had had, and very often it does come through that our loved ones are just so in love with us here and so proud of the work that we're doing that they're basically ecstatic on the other side. And the fact that we made those choices to come into these lives, which I do believe we make those choices, and that we know that when we come in, there's going to be some challenges and we're up to the task. And hopefully we will fulfill whatever that task was. Um, the people on the other side are just so behind us and helping us and proud of us. And that when we do finally finish our time on this earth, when our tasks have been completed and our souls are saying, okay, well, it's time to go home, we get over there, it's like a great big party. And, our loved ones, our friends, our people come up and they say, oh, you did a wonderful job. The people that we may have touched in this life, if it was just a small little touch, like a smile at the store clerk, or a bigger touch where you actually helped a person with a problem or a family, whatever, they're coming at you saying, oh my gosh, what you did made my day, or it made a whole difference in my life. um, they do honor us for making these choices. Now, many of them over there also made the choices. They were also here with us and they went through their trials and tribulations. And when they went over, they were greeted by their people.
Mm.
So, yes, I do think that we have chosen a very unique time in human history to be here in the now, to be in a place where we can learn. We have the access to so much information that allows us to uncover the afterlife, to delve into issues of consciousness, and to learn to love everybody and to help each other through this process. This is a difficult time. Oh my goodness. Um, but here we are, and we're here for a reason. We choose to come down here. I think it's James Van Prague would say that this is our school, Earth School, and we come here to go through these classes because we know it's not going to be easy, but we're learning as we're going through it. And as we learn, we're also contributing to the greater whole. We're contributing to
Mm.
the greater good and to the global consciousness. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around when you're young and you don't know this stuff. But at my age, I've learned so much. It's like, oh, okay, now I get it. It makes sense. That's why sometimes life was hard, but I'm making it through, and I'm going to be okay when I get over there, and I'll probably get a high five from a few people. So I think that's great.
Are you familiar with a Dr. Newton's work in LBL or Life Between Lives research?
Yes, I am. Yes.
I have been through that process myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I find fascinating is, in spite of the fact that I loved learning about the previous life right before this one, and how there are certain elements of my present life that are quite similar to that previous life.
Hmm.
Um, it's the life between lives and the experiences that I was taken through, or that I shouldn't say I was taken through, that I went through. And I'm curious as to if you've ever gone through that, though I'm sure it sounds like you've read some of his work. I've got 3 or 4 of his books on my Audible library shelf that I've listened to, and they're all independent of one another,
Hmm.
which to me adds credence to that information.
Hmm.
But that, as I mentioned earlier, that yeah, I'll always know my father, that entity as my father, that entity as my sister. My mother, as a matter of fact, you and I are conversing right now on my mother's 90th birthday.
Oh,
And I
congratulations.
called her this morning and I wished her happy birthday. And I told her there's some things coming your way and so forth. Not only flowers, but a copy of my book.
Hmm.
Um, but I said, I'll bet you have the same response that Dad had when I asked him this question on his 70th birthday. And that question was, so Dad, how's it feel to be 70? To which he responded, well, 2 things. One is I didn't expect to live this long. 2, I'm glad I'm here. Well, my mother is 20 years older than he was when he answered that question,
Uh-huh.
and she feels the same way.
Wonderful.
And my sister and her husband are taking her to breakfast this morning, on this morning of this day. She's going to meet with some of her friends that she has there, probably at the townhouse complex that she lives in Phoenix. And she says she's been celebrating. She already started celebrating probably days earlier, which is just fine. Make it the whole month, Mom. Make it the whole month.
Right.
Um, we live in a linear reality, but those who have gone on, your husband, your son, my father, my sister, to name just a few,
Hmm.
they don't live in a linear world. There is no time.
Right.
How do you, when you get messages, shall we say, of guidance,
Hmm.
um, do they ever mention time in the guidance, or is it just boom, here it is, and then it kind of happens when it happens? How does that construct translate from this realm to that, or vice versa?
Boy, that's a really tricky question. Basically, the guidance and any of the communications I've received, time does not seem to be a factor in anything beyond, spirit may come in with a little something that like, oh, well, this kind of happened in the past, but the past could have been an hour ago or a week ago, right?
Hmm.
Um, as far as the future, you can get a little information for somebody or for yourself about the future that's more of a, well, pay attention because something may be important coming up. But they're
Hmm.
not going to come in and say, oh, well, don't drive your car tomorrow because you're going to be in an accident. It's never something specific because the future is always changing. And so what they might see in that, whatever it is they're looking at in that future point may or may not happen, but they can give you a little caution, like, maybe you should, like, not be driving a lot in the coming days, but they're not going to say something specific. Um, Time over there just has no consequence. It's my understanding that, when you go over there, uh, and you're watching your people here on earth, for you in the spirit world, it's just a few seconds before they join you. For us
Mm.
down here, it could be, well, maybe a few seconds, but mostly it's days, weeks, months, years of our time. Time is just a construct in this material world, and it has no meaning over there. So because there's no meaning over there, I guess the spirit people don't pay a lot of attention to what we call time. So
Mm.
they're not coming in with time factors. They don't, I've never heard of spirit coming in, for myself or for anyone else so far, where they've said, "Oh, gee, and I knew you because 3 lives ago we were, husband and wife or what have you. That may come in through regressions where you're experiencing people and you're recognizing your spirit family or your group. But as far as making connections with spirit people, I have not had that experience, and I don't recall hearing anyone else saying, oh yeah, I had a spirit person come in who said they were their person's, great great grandmother and whatever. Um, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah. So time has no meaning over there, really. It's just a construct for us. We have to live linear because for us, it's like there's the past, the present, and the future. Over there, they're always living in the present.
Mm.
Always.
I've even thought we have individuals in this world today that I'm sure the condition has been this way for centuries, where you have a certain segment of the population that has been labeled with autism,
Mm-hmm.
Down syndrome. They refer to the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been said by some that these individuals don't this is what sets them apart. This is why we have so much trouble communicating with them, relating to them, because they don't live in the past or the future. They live in the now. They don't have any concept in their being of past future, at least not as we would understand it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, man, that wouldn't be a bad place to be sometimes, because of some of the things that we've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And yet for you and I, it's like, well, but those experiences do make us who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're ever changing in that regard. Whereas a person who is, and I'll use the term on the spectrum, does not seem to change that much, or at least not in the ways that you and I would recognize.
Right.
Um, that sounds to me like the way it is on the other side, as the term goes. I have trouble with that concept because it's like, what other side? They're here with us right now.
Mm-hmm.
We just are not aware of them, or we don't perceive them. Most of us are not aware and don't perceive them. You do.
Mm-hmm.
When did that start for you?
Actually, the perceiving them happens when because of the training I've received in being a medium, it happens because I've learned how to build up my own power and build up my own vibration to try to match with the spirit people. I have to ask them to come in and meet me at a midpoint so that I can hear from them, see them, communicate with them. I know there are mediums who can see folks, they've done it all their lives. I don't have that ability, but I do have the ability to bring my own vibration up, my own frequency, and meet spirit at some point where I can understand what they're saying. Now, you're mentioning the people with the autism and the Down syndrome and some of the other conditions that are coming in. Some have said that many of those souls are coming in at a higher vibration already. They're really still more closely connected to the spirit frequency than most of us, and they're still operating in that spirit world. I think that that would make sense for so many of them, especially with the autistic. I have personal experience with Down syndrome. I just love people with Down syndrome. They're just so special to me. And my own sister, my youngest sister, um, has cerebral palsy, and it puts her again in the similar range, spectrum as these other children. And I've always felt that she is an angel, basically, that she is at a higher vibration than the rest of us, and she doesn't live for the past. She doesn't live for the future. She lives in the present, with one exception. She loves Christmas, and every year she tells us what she wants for Christmas. That's her future. Christmas comes, she gets what she wants, and then she's worried about the next Christmas. Rest of the time it's about the here and now. She came as an angel to teach me, to teach my family, to teach those who work with her patience and love and understanding. But she's in her own little world. Absolutely. And I know she is more connected to spirit than any of us will ever be in our human forms. And I think that's a beautiful place to be.
Well, I think it's extraordinary, this whole process. As I said earlier in the as we started, the subject is fascinating to me. I remember certain instances when certain individuals passed. Uh, and strangely enough, not so much when my sister or my father passed, but it was like when, first of all, when Michael Jackson passed, it was on an auspicious birthday for me or day before. And I'm going, dang it, he took the wind out of my sails by doing this because now everybody's, kind of thing. But one of the first thoughts that went through my mind was, I wonder what he's going through. What is he experiencing? And those kinds of things. Even though, again, I had already read the books, I'd been through the hypnosis process, so I kind of already knew. But still, it was like, I wonder what his awareness is. I wonder what he's thinking. What he's it's like. Maybe he's looking around, going, "What happened? What am I doing here?" Kind of, because I know some people, they go so quickly that it's a shock to their system, if you will, whatever that
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
Whereas others, I think, like my sister and my father, and I was fortunate on both accounts. I had a conversation with my sister 3 months before she passed, and I asked her. I said, and this was a hard question for me to ask, but it was okay. She said it was okay. I says, "Are you ready?" And of course, her response, which frustrated me to no end, was yes and no.
Yeah.
No, because she didn't want to leave her husband with all of the stuff that she knew he'd have to deal with. But yes,
Hmm.
she wasn't afraid. She was ready. And my father, my wife and I got to speak to my father through video phone the night before his passing.
Hmm.
And my mother told me that we were the last two to have a conversation with him before apparently he was unconscious shortly thereafter. But he was lucid. He knew who I was, told me he loved me, told me he was proud of us for what we had done and what we were doing and so forth. And there's something that you will experience at the end of this program that I share. And I did this after at the end of one of my interviews with one of my guests who said that every time I mention them, they appear. Now, that's not to say that they aren't here now because we've been talking about them. But I thought, wow, that's cool. Um, that it doesn't so much ease my mind as much as it just feels good to know that they're around. And I would get it that you sense that your husband and son, they're around you along with what, like archangels and other entities and other support staff, shall we say, that are there helping you through each moment, each hour, each day, especially if you start if the grief starts to overwhelm, kind of thing.
Hmm. 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 Oh, they're always here, and they find a way to let you know when you really need it. One example, as I was writing this book about my son's death and where it led me, I had pulled up some videos on the computer and I was looking at them, and of course there's videos of my husband and my son, and I started getting pretty emotional, and I'm sitting in the living room with the laptop in front of me, and tears started coming, and I'm feeling this grief, and I'm like, God, I miss you guys. And suddenly I hear a noise and I look up, and at my window there is a hummingbird tapping on the glass on one side of the window, and the other side has a screen, and there's a hummingbird clinging to the screen with its wings outstretched, and it looked almost like a cross. And I looked at that and I just knew that it was my husband and my son saying, "Hey, it's okay. We're right here. Look, look, we're right here." I mean, I've never heard of hummingbirds doing that for anybody. And I just knew when I saw that they were telling me, "It's okay. It's okay. If you want to cry, cry, but we're right here. Don't grieve so bad." So, that's just a remarkable sign that they give. Usually you just feel the presence. You feel maybe a touch. My husband likes to touch the hair on my head. My son just likes to laugh in my ear. Um, but I do feel them. I'll feel the dogs. I too have lost a lot of pets over the years, and I'll feel them around and the cats. But Yeah, my close people, they're around. My husband and son are my biggest supporters. So yeah, they're
Mm.
always around us, and you can kind of tune in if you want. Just sit calmly and ask them, are you here? Are you here? Can you let me know? And you might feel a brush on your face or a sound that's unusual. A light. I have a light that'll flicker sometimes. If I'm on the phone talking about my husband, a light will flicker. If I'm on the phone talking to my son's friends or his old girlfriend, the ceiling fan will kick on. Just okay. I don't know why. Okay. And that's Matthew. So they'll send signs like that, or they'll just give you a feeling,
Mm,
you know?
interesting. And I
hmm
think that's wonderful too. I actually went down a list over the last, actually, I'm going to say after over the last 4 years, 4.5 years of the people that have gone on. And actually, I would have to amend that. Actually, the last 2 years, so starting with 22. And there were 3 months, 4 months, January, February, March, and then May, where I lost 4 people. Now, actually 5 because my wife lost her last sibling, and so now she is the sole representative of the family,
hmm
and she gets upset because she's mad because they left her behind. I says you need to take that as an honor they have bestowed upon you to carry the name, if you will, and so forth. And she's kind of made peace with that. But I
Okay.
lost a dear friend who he and I used to work together in my studio, transferring audio from vinyl and reel to reel to the computer. February, I lost a good friend who was one of our program hosts, who I became good friends with over the years that he was doing the program. Obviously, in March, my wife lost her sister in early March. I lost my sister in late March. And then my best friend passed away on May 1st of last year, 23.
hmm
And and then this year, I lost a good friend who was also a Native American, was also sort of a mentor of sorts. Although I find that there are those who don't like to be referred to as mentors. A good friend of mine, Ramona Richards, she's also passed on. She did not like it when I referred to her as a mentor. She says, "I'm your friend," but she gave me a book. I'm curious as to the works that you have acquired over the years that have meant the most to you. Now, obviously, your book, which I should mention again, Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day. It's a mother's story of loss, love, and connecting with the afterlife. But is there a particular work that you, I don't know, carry with you or have with you that you turn to that gives you gives you support? I know some people, they'll flip the Bible open and let the universe tell them or the spirit tell them the verse to read and so forth, and it'll inspire them. Anything along those lines for you?
I can't say that I have a specific book like that I pick up for inspiration. I have a number of books that have inspired me over the time, especially after my son had passed over. I was led to books by James Van Prague and Mark Ireland, and led me to Suzanne Giesemann and eventually to Suzanne Wilson. And all of them have excellent books that talk about the afterlife or, meeting with spirit on the other side. And I find a lot of inspiration in reading their books. But as far as something just something that, oh, I need to read something inspiring, not so much. I do have a book by John Rodell called Remedy that I'll pick up every now and then and just kind of
Mm.
page through and read something. Or yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Do you have
I'm a big reader, but I don't
yeah?
reread a lot.
Do you have experiences that maybe not are not necessarily those on the other side, son and husband, communicating messages or what have you to you, but where the universe is just kind of like guiding you and saying, "Hey, keep going this way. You're doing great.
hmm
Everything's
hmm
fine." you know, and those types of things where maybe even like I've only had one experience like this with since my father's passing, and it was early on, where I was in the shower and I just sobbed. Um, Whereas my best friend, of 53 years, who passed away May 1st of last year, I have not shed a tear for the man because ever since, because every time I think about him, I have to laugh because we had so much fun together. We just had a blast together. How about you in terms of going through your day to day, especially in light of obviously the way you phrased the book, living and loving life all day, every day? Those experiences where the universe is, I don't know, sort of guiding and comforting and supporting
Mhm.
and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a variety of ways the universe can get my attention, and a lot of it depends on, the situation I'm going through or what the thoughts are on my mind. One of the things that the universe will do is maybe I'm not feeling great about something one day. I'm feeling a little grief, and I'll think about something relating to my son. I'll step outside and I'll look around. I live kind of in a rural area, and I'll see bluebirds. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's a sign from my son that, the universe has brought these bluebirds to me. That makes me feel better." I'll be watching a program and it'll come to my mind like, oh gosh, I don't know where I'm going, what am I doing here, what should I be doing, and something will come on a program that has some inspiring, viewpoints that I'm like, oh, that got my attention. I hadn't thought of it that way. Pick up a book maybe that I'll start reading and it'll have a passage that touches my heart. I'll go on Facebook and I'll be like, oh, okay, so what should I be focusing on in the next few days? And there'll be somebody posting something from a poet that just touches my heart or a photo. One of the biggest things that catches me from the universe is a song. I can get in the car. For instance, about a month ago, I was heading down to Phoenix for a Helping Parents Heal conference. And I get in the car and turn on the radio, start driving, and a song pops on, and it's, knocking on heaven's door. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good song to go down to a Helping Parents Heal conference because it's going to be a weekend of mediums and parents who've been grieving, but who understand their kids are in the afterlife. And here we are, what, knocking on heaven's door. Wow, that was a pretty good sign from the universe. So you get all these little things that if you just pay attention, you can connect that message or that song or that event with something that's going on in your own mind or in your own life.
Yeah. We're talking with our very special guest here on the program. Her name is Diane Calderon, and her book is Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day. What kinds of dreams? You get messages when you're sleeping. I myself, if I am dreaming, I don't remember them. Not a clue. And then when I do remember them and I wake up and I have little tabs or titter tatters of some little segments of it, and then eventually it just it goes away like smoke.
Mhm.
I guess I need to learn how to remember my dreams. But what about you and your dreams?
I have a lot of dreams, and like you, I often have a hard time remembering them when I wake up. I mean, it's like moment you wake up, it's like, oh my gosh, that was like what? What was that again? And you have to work at it to try to recall it, and you don't always get to recall it. I have had some very interesting dreams over my time, and I'll wake up and it's like, oh my God, what was that about? And I'll make a note and write it down so I don't forget. Uh, a lot of the dreams I've had will involve my son and my husband. I had one that was really remarkable in that my husband was from Mexico. And in the dream, this is after he had passed, I am walking down this street in the city where his family had lived, and, and everything is sepia toned. It's not black and white, it's not in color. It's like I'm walking in the old antique days of the old photographs, and I'm walking down these streets, and I'm led to a plaza, and he is sitting there with his family and they're all in the sepia tone, and he's not talking to me, but everybody else in the family is chatting away. And I woke up from that and I'm like, that was a fascinating dream. I don't know why I dreamed it, but I had this sense that it was drawing me back to a prior life with them as a soul group, because I felt over years that I may have lived in Mexico in a prior life. I have a very, strong affinity for Mexico. So I
Hmm.
had a feeling that that's what that dream was telling me, that, yeah, you're part of our soul family and, we go way, way back. That was kind of a remarkable dream. But yeah, I do have a lot of dreams. Some of them don't make any sense. Some of them I've had to ask other people to help me interpret. I had one dream where I had four Kachinas, which are Hopi native gods basically, who showed up from the east, and they were giving me messages. And I wrote that down and called a friend of mine that's Navajo and said, "Do you know what this means?" And she was able to describe what each of those beings meant and the message they were giving me. So that was pretty remarkable. But I couldn't figure it out on my own. I had to go to someone else for some guidance.
Mm. I know that that's something too that I've talked about in terms of seeking guidance outside of myself
Mhm.
as opposed to going within, which is, by the way, what we encourage people. We have dubbed the first year of this decade the year of perfect vision, 2020. Now it's the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and we ask people to go within and
Mhm.
listen to the still small voice. But there
Mhm.
are times when, and I took this tack, I will go to a medium or someone with maybe who uses cards or maybe just, accesses, recognizing what you said earlier about how the future is always changing because we're always changing. But it's more when I go to them, I'm seeking external confirmation of what I already know. Is that kind of where you come from?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And that seems to give you that sense, I don't know, a sense of peace, or at least a level of confidence that I'm going to keep going this way because this is, I've gotten that confirmation and so forth.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm. Yeah, it's good to get the validation and another person's perspective. And when it pretty much matches what you already knew, it just encourages you to keep on that path.
yeah.
Yeah, and I often have people come to me, with questions. And it's like, well, could you tell me what this means, or where am I going? And I'll try to tap into, that higher self, or those guides that I have, to find a way to answer them or reply to them. And it's kind of nice where sometimes when I give a response, they'll say to me, "That's kind of what I was thinking about. That's where I was going," or, "Oh, that really helps because I wasn't sure." That clarified.
Mm,
So yeah, it's good to seek, some assistance from the outside. Trust yourself, but it helps when somebody else is in line with what you're thinking.
yeah. And I don't like to go to someone who is, shall we say, a yes person. And I don't
Mhm.
think I ever have. I guess I've been fortunate that the universe has always taken me to someone who is not there to inflate my ego or what have you. They're trying to be genuine. As opposed, I know there are people out there, the charlatans, who,
Yeah.
they claim this and that. Madame Cleo, if I remember correctly, of years ago. Oh my heavens, that was
Oh,
something
wow.
else.
Yeah.
But they're out there certainly, but that's where the universe comes in, that it will guide you if you're looking for some external clarification. The universe will guide you to someone who will give you some insight that will be beneficial, but not necessarily just agree with. And I guess the best way for one to make that determination is don't tell the person anything about what you're wanting to know.
Right.
Just put the question out there. By the way, that's one of the things that I found fascinating about the gentleman who took me through the LBL hypnosis. He
Hmm.
never asked leading questions. It was always, what are you experiencing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? And so forth. And that to me adds greater credence, not only to his professionalism, but also to what I'm experiencing because I'm
Yeah.
not being led down a path.
Yeah.
When you give readings, which I guess you do from time to time,
from time to time.
yeah. Um, is there a certain criterion by which you will do that, or because I would venture that you don't give readings to everybody who asks?
Well, to be honest, I haven't done a lot of readings in a while because part of my emphasis was getting this book written, and that
Hmm.
took a lot of energy. Part of my time is spent working for this other medium, Suzanne. And in doing that work, I sometimes don't have a regular schedule. So things can come up at the oddest of times to help her or her clients or get involved in some of the functions and events that she's involved in. And I haven't really made a commitment to do the mediumship um, as a professional. But recently, Suzanne has been pushing me and telling me, you can do this. You need to be doing this. And I've been led to write a book about my developing as a medium and some of the things I experienced. And part of that would be to say, yeah, I am a medium. So with her pushing, I have opened myself up to do a few readings. And these are with some of the clients that she has, who she's offered, like, Diane can do a reading for you. And so I'm getting back into it. And as slow as I've been at getting started, I find that I'm not doing too badly. And I did get some nudges when I was at the Helping Parents Heal conference, in which unexpectedly three different mediums, two of them I sort of knew, one I didn't know who he was at all, came up to me and, gave me a little information that my son was saying, Mom, you can do this. You can do this. Why aren't you doing this? So, with that in mind, it looks like I'm going to be focusing a little more on doing some mediumship. I do not have set up a website yet to take clients, but it looks like the universe is nudging me to be doing that fairly soon. So I'm taking little baby steps. I'm getting back into it. I will be putting together my next book. And by the time that book's ready to publish, I should be doing mediumship much more frequently, and I'll have a process for people to reach me.
Living and loving life all day, every day. Diane Calderon is my guest, a mother's story of loss, love, and connecting with the afterlife. I want to thank you so much for giving us the time here on the program to talk about this story. And I know there's more to share. We encourage people to go to your website, dianecalderon.com,
Mhm.
to find out more, as well as order a copy of your book. Is it available yet in Audible?
It is not available yet in Audible. It is something that I've been discussing with a friend who says you need to do it on Audible because most people do Audible now. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I should. So it's something that I really need to look at because I know that's the way that a lot of the younger people are getting
Hmm.
their books. And old people like me were like, Audible? But but I do need to do that. So I that is on my agenda.
Well, I'll tell you what, you and I will talk following the program. But I thank you so
Beautiful.
much for being a part of what we're doing here and trying to raise the consciousness and make people aware that there's help out there. All you have to do is ask. So thank you for being a part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I just want to say I appreciate this opportunity once again. And I do hope people do find a way to, investigate my story and my book and find a little hope, help healing in my tale because, we don't die. Love lives forever. And that's what I'm trying to express here. And my son, pushes me to do this. And it's important that this story gets out because some people need to hear this.
Absolutely.
Thank
Well,
you.
I have three final questions that I ask all of my guests. I'll ask you that in just a moment, but here's a
Okay.
reminder that I thank you folks for listening to and watching. Tell me your story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We're also here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., and we stream live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. I hope you'll subscribe and click notifications so that when I post a new conversation, you'll be notified and you can listen in and glean some great information from each one of our guests. I also ask that if you can help us out financially to support the work that we are doing to, in essence, change the world and give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true and look for those new ways of living, we would be gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And we ask that when you are prompted to put in an email address, just put in richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. Also, a reminder that Choices is available on Amazon in both paperback, hardcover, as well as Kindle. Audible is coming soon, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope that you will avail yourselves of any one of those formats, again, through Amazon.com. And as I mentioned earlier, we hope that you will take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within and listen to that still small voice. With all of that said, we now go to our final three questions for our very special guest. And the first of those is, who is Diane Calderon?
Who is Diane Calderon? Diane Calderon is just an average person who lived a rather uninteresting life, I would think, until my son died. And his death shifted my whole perspective, my whole awareness of life, and led me to a new path where I understand that we are just spiritual beings living in these crazy human conditions and these bodies some of us choose that are unusual, and we are all connected by heart, by love, and we're moving forward to a greater future
Hmm.
in the spirit world.
What is it that gets you up in the morning?
My dog wakes me up as soon as the sun shines outside. He's on the bed licking me, but basically it's just, to wake up to another day and wonder what's going to happen today. What kind of miracles can occur? What kind of things am I going to learn? I look forward to every morning, no matter what I'm going to be doing that day, or maybe I wake up and have no agenda in mind. We'll see where that day leads, so
Hmm.
that at the end of the day, I can be grateful for having made it through one more day, but also a day closer to joining my family over on the other side.
Hmm. As we all will.
Mhm.
And finally, what was your best day?
In my entire life? Wow. Yeah, my best day, that's a tough one, but my best day was the day my son was born.
Hmm.
It was the day that changed my life at that point in time. I mean, I was just, a selfish adult who was stumbling along trying to figure out what I was doing with my life, and working and taking care of myself and my husband. But this little baby comes into my world, and everything changed. Life revolved around him, and it still does. So
Hmm.
yeah, my best day was that little kid coming through and just looking so angelic.
Hmm.
And life has never been the same with his
Well,
coming in and with his leaving. Oh my
mhm.
goodness. Yep.
Well, Diane, thank you again for joining us here on the program. It's been a pleasure not only to get to know you, get to meet you, but to share your story here on Tell Me Your Story. So thank you once again. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.